So welcome back to this guide about the DeepMind 12, and on this one I will cover everything I didn't cover on the previous guide. If you didn't watch that one, I'm going to give you the link as a card, or maybe you have a link on the description. So remember, this is a guide, this is not a review. So this is going to be of just a bit longer video because I will cover every single part of the Arp patterns, the sequencer, the chords, the polychords, and then I'm going to be talking about the compare and some other options too. And remember, everything is timelined, and you can, scroll through the sections, or you can speed up the velocity of the playback. Okay, so let's start about the first thing we are going to be covering, which is the patterns that you get on the Arp. So on this one, of course, I'm going to be going always to a default patch, and right here, if you toggle on and off, you're going to be doing an Arp. Right? So of course the rate is going to decide how fast you go, and the gate time will decide how wide the notes are. It's the gate time. And we already talked about this on the previous video. If you go right here to edit, you're going to be entering the arpeggiator options. And again, we already talked about this on the previous one, so go and check that link. On this one, we are just going to cover the things that I didn't cover on the previous one, which is the pattern in this case. So right here at the bottom, you get the pattern. Once you go there, you are going to find none. So that's the first pattern. So you get no pattern. Everything is going to be the same. So in this case, what you can do, you can go right here and you're going to see that you have some presets. So by default on the synth, you get 32 programmed kind of a factory presets, and you get 32, and they're not editable. You just cannot change them, and they all sound different. If I play something, notice that it sounds different. They sound different. And some of the other ones, if you go up on the on the list, are going to be a little bit more kind of a complex. There you go. So super cool. All right, so the thing is that you cannot change them, and that's that's the bad part. But the good part is that if you go to the 33, it's going to be the one of the users. So what you get, is just you get a pattern. And this one is your user patterns, and you can store up to 32 patterns, which is super cool. Now, the first thing, of course, we're going to talk about all the options that you get and how we can create patterns. Now, the first thing is the save and the import. Let's say that you want to import some other pattern that you really like. So if you go to yes, which is going to be the import, you're going to be it's going to ask you, just go to the pattern that you want to import. And then you are going to go right there and just select the one that you want to import. And you can do whatever you want right here. You can use select user presets or built-in presets. In this case, I'm just going to be importing this one. You can go back, or you can go to import. If I do import, now that's my pattern. Now notice that when you import, it's not saving, of course. So you're going to use the same button to save. But in this case, you're going to do the minus or the no in this case. And you do no, and then you have your pattern. So, all right. So very cool. So let's talk about the other things that you can do. Of course, once you're here, you can toggle through the different patterns, the different steps with the encoder right here at the top. Now, you can see that it says length and then 8. This is the length, and you can do up to 32 steps. So if I go and select this one with the up and down, you're going to be selecting or changing the length. Now, of course, you need to do a lot of, tapping, but with the data entry, you just can go up and down on this one. And it's just going to be a little bit easier. Now, of course, I'm going to go to something a little bit more normal. I'm going to do 8 for now. And I'm going to just, I'm going to save it. Okay. So, of course, modifying the velocity and the gate is what is going to create the pattern. So once you go to velocity, this is going to be, kind of a checking or selecting the velocity. And you can go with the up or down, just like before. Or you can use the data entry. If I go all the way up, it's going to change them. So change patterns to steps. You can go and just do the same, exactly the same. And for now, I'm going to do something simple just to show you how this works. So I'm going to go there, and maybe there, and then there, and then there. Of course, now the pattern is going to be pretty much nothing because the velocity is pretty much the same. Now, the other thing is going to be the gate. Notice that the gate, some of the patterns, they're kind of a missing a line, or some of the patterns, they have a kind of a different gate. They are just wider or just, narrower. So, okay, in this case, it's going to be the gate. Now, if I go right there and let me just do yes, I'm going to go here and I'm going to select this one. I'm going to go back. So if I select the velocity and I go up right there, let me just select this one. I go to velocity and I'm going to change this one. With the other one, you can just change the gate. And this is going to be, you know, how narrow or wide. Now, if one trick that you can do, let's say I like this step, right? Let's say I just like this one. I'm going to make it, you know, a little bit like that. And I just like it. So what you can do, you can just press and hold and notice that it says DUP for duplicate. So with the encoder, if you move it and you release it, it's going to copy and paste that step. And you can just repeat the process, go to the next one and just, you know, copy paste. And then you go right there and you copy paste. Now, of course, the length, it's really important when it works with the gate time. And the gate time is like the global control that you get by default. So if you, for example, let's say I select this one and I modify the gate to be kind of a bigger. And if I go to maybe this one, let me just go to this one. Let's say no, I'm going to go to this one and I modify the gate. It doesn't matter what I do if the gate is all the way down, because this is the global control. I need to go up on the gate for this ones to work. So in this case, the gate time, it's kind of really important. So now the trick right here comes when you start, you know, messing and doing different things. Maybe I'm going to be changing the gate of that one and I go to velocity. And again, you just need to play around with this. Just do different things, maybe different velocities, different gates. Let me go to the next one. I'm going to go there, just make it a little bit bigger. The next one is going to be like that. The next one like that. All right. And of course, the gate and the velocity will just change how the arpeggio sounds. Right now, I have a basic sound, so we don't have a lot of difference. But with a good patch, not a default patch, you get, you know, you get something a little bit better. Now, of course, with any sequencer, this is not a sequencer, but it's just kind of a working like that. What you can do, you can tie steps or you can skip steps. So if I go right here and go all the way down and then go to the next one right here, it's going to be like skipping steps. Right? So another thing that you can do, you can tie steps. And this is just a different thing. Let me go up on those ones. I'm going to go maybe there. So let's go maybe to this one. And I want to say that I want to kind of tie them. So of course the gate, it's important right here on that one. So I'm going to go and make the gate of 100%, right? I'm just going to make it super wide. Now, if you want to tie them, if you want to, you know, kind of a tie, you need to press the effects and notice that it says tie right now. Not duplicate like the other one, it's going to say tie. So when you move it, it's going to tie them when you release it. So now, of course, notice that it's a little bit different. They are tied to each other. And same thing, if I go right here, I'm going to go right there, move it to the next one and release it. And it's going to just tie. And then again, it's going to change the sound. And now the arpeggio is just a completely different thing. Now notice that the right here, the patch, the pattern is not saved. So, you know, you get something right here that says comp. And of course, it's not compression. It's going to be compare. And on this synthesizer, you have the compare kind of a function on a lot of different things. And this is one of the things we are going to talk about in this video. Whenever you do compare, what it's going to do is going to compare it with the previous patch, the one that you, you load previously. So if you had a patch and then you start modifying it, it's going to compare with that one. If I do, if I play something and do the compare, notice that now it's showing me the one I had before, the one we started with, and then when I hit compare, it's going to show me the one I have right now. And this, of course, works if you type it, if you press it, it's going to show you what you have before and what you have now. Right, so that's what the comp means. Now, of course, again, if you want to save it, you just click tap there on this one, and I'm not on the compare, this one. I'm going to go there and I'm going to save it. And there you go. So that's the whole pattern, right? Very, very simple. So, okay, so the patterns are really cool, but now we're going to talk about a different thing. It is the chord, and then we're going to talk about the polychord. So they are very similar, but at the same time, they are very different. Now, the thing is that once we cover the chord, which is the easy one, the polychord, which is a little bit more complex, is going to be like very easy to understand. So first, of course, we're going to load a default patch, and we have nothing at all. And when we go to chord, we're going to get this screen. And I know it looks a little bit confusing, but it's just very, very, very simple. So what you get at the bottom, you get three main options. You get the exit. Of course, this will just get you out of the chord mode. And if you go back to the chord, you're going to go back, and then you get the rec, and then you get the delete. Now notice that you do have some kind of some keys right here, and then it says custom. Well, the thing is that when you save a chord, and this is what this does, when you save a chord and you turn off the synthesizer, you just turn it off. It doesn't matter. It just will remember that the last chord you did. So there's one way to kind of erase the memory of the synthesizer, but that's going to be like we're going back to factory settings. You have it on the manual. I believe it's called power boot or something like that, or cycle boot, something like that. You're going to need to check it on the manual. I'm not going to do it right here, but you can go there and just check it out. Now, right there, again, you get the exit, which is, pretty simple. Then you get the rec, and then you get the delete. So the delete, once you have something loaded right there, it's not empty, it works a little bit like the rec. So if I do delete, it's kind of deleting what I had from before, but then it says armed. So armed, it means that it's listening for you to do something. And what this does, the main function of this chord mode, is that you can play a chord, it's going to remember that chord, save it, and then it will kind of assign it to a key and transpose it. That's the main function of the chord mode. So for example, right now it says armed. So it means that it's listening for something. So if I do a minor chord, let me just do something like that. It's kind of changing now. It says press triggered. So it means that it recognized the chord and it's just saved it. And now it's just awaiting for a trigger. So the trigger, it means on which key you want to put it. Remember that the chord mode, what it does, it will just remember your chord and it will assign it to a key so you can play one chord just playing one key. That's the whole deal. So now it's waiting for the key where I'm going to be storing this chord. So I did a C minor chord on the C4, right? On that octave. I'm going to go to C2. And I'm going to just play right there. That's going to be C2. And I'm going to release it. Once you're done, this chord will be assigned to that note, that's C2. And notice it says custom MI. And then it gives you the chords that, the keys that we pressed. So now if I go to that C2, when I press it, we get the chord just playing one single key. Now, maybe you're thinking, okay, so maybe I can do a different chord and save it to a different key. That's not how the chord mode works. The chord mode, once you store it to one key and then you go to the next one, I'm going to play a D now. It's going to play the same chord, but it's going to transpose it. It's just going to transpose it. Now, of course, if you're playing high, if you make a high chord just like it did, and let's do it again, it's armed. I'm going to again play a C4 and then do a C2. So it doesn't matter, it's C2. The C4 is going to play in the C2. So if you want a lower chord, you're going to need to kind of record a lower chord, right? That's if that makes sense. But now, of course, you can, once you have it stored, you just can go and listen to different chords just by playing the same chord by playing one single key. So, of course, that's what we did when we do delete, and the record is going to work exactly the same way. If I go to right here and record, it says armed, so I'm going to do a lower octave. I'm doing C3, C minor. Notice that we get it right there. It's going to be waiting for a trigger, so I'm going to be assigning it to C2, and now we get the same thing. Right, so sometimes you would like to create some chords that are a little bit more complex. Maybe this is a good feature for that. So what you can do, I'm going to go there, and notice on the keyboard, I'm going to be kind of holding keys. And this will not store the chord until you release the keys. So I'm going to do 1, I'm going to do 2, I'm going to do 3, I'm going to do 4. And once I release it, then it's asking me for the trigger. I'm going to do C2, and we get a minor 7. So, not a very complex chord, but, you just can do it with 2 hands. And then that minor chord is just going to be transposed. So this is how it works. You record something, a chord, whatever, and then you assign it to a key, and then the chord is going to be transposed all over the place. So that's it. That's what the chord mode does. It will record something and then transpose it. Now there are a few more things that I believe they don't even worth mentioning because they're very small. But make sure that you understand what you get right here, which is the name of the chord that you're doing, and it is recognizing this, and then it's giving you the notes that you're playing. Then the keys right here, which is where you are, and at the top you get the kind of the full range. So if I go up, it's going to give me on which range I am, which octave I am, and this is going to be very important for the polychords. So now that we kind of understand a little bit more what's going on right here, we can talk about the polychords. Okay, so let's talk about the polychord right now. I'm always starting from a default patch. So now that we know the chord mode, the polychord is going to be very easy to understand. So the chord mode, the one we used previously, we can just record one single chord and everything is going to be transposed to the other keys. Now the polychord, it's a little bit different. You can kind of record the chord, that part's the same, and then what you can do is you can store it to one single key. And that one key only will play that chord. So this means that you can record many different chords and store them on different keys, or maybe 10 different keys. And of course, that's what the polychord does. That's the difference. Now, of course, there's a twist. Since you're storing many chords and you might have, a lot of chord progressions, what this gives you, and I'm going to go to the polychord right now, notice that the panel right here at the bottom looks a little bit different. So they give you banks. You have 4 different banks where you can store chords. And if you want to toggle through the banks, right here is the button. Notice that it goes bank B, bank C, and then D, and then A. And I've kind of erased everything so I can show you how it works. Because you have a limit. You cannot do whatever you want or store a million different chords. You're going to need to kind of be aware of how much you're using. And the length or how much you use depends on how many keys you store right here. So, okay, so, how does this works? So this one works pretty much the same way. I'm going to go right here to the rec. Once you do this, it's going to tell you that this is armed. So you're going to need to play a chord. And I'm going to do just a minor chord, right? It's recognizing it right here, and it says learning. I'm going to release it, and then it's going to ask me, where do you want to put this chord? And I'm going to do a C. So once you do it, now there on the keyboard, on the display, it says C3, right? So pretty simple to understand. So now if I do C3, it's going to play that chord. Now if I do a D, notice that I don't get a chord. So this is very useful because maybe you can have a fundamental note right there at the bottom, and if I do something at the top, it's just, not going to play a chord. So you can use it that way. Now, of course, you can store as many chords as you want until, you reach 100% of the capacity of the bank. So you can do, complex chords, and you can hold the keys just to record the chord. For example, if I do a rec, it's asking me, play something. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, right? We have a lot of notes right there. I'm going to release, and then it's going to ask me for a trigger. If I, of course, select the C3, that one is occupied, and it's telling you right there, it has a mark right there, the C3, and it's telling you that it's being used. So if I go to the next one, the D is going to assign that to the D. So if I do this, and then I do this, it's going to play the other chord. And just like this, you can record many different chords and store them on different positions. Now, notice that when we did this one, the usage of the bank was 1%, almost nothing. Now, if I play a key where we don't have anything, it's going to tell you how much you're using. Now we are up to 4%. So remember that how many keys you play, you're going to go up on the usage of the bank. Gladly you get 4 different banks. Now, when you play a key where we have assigned a chord, notice that the view changes right here at the bottom. If I play a key where we have nothing, it's just going to, change a little bit. So I'm going to go back there, and you have the delete. Of course, you can delete that chord. And for now, I'm going to go and delete the complex one. Just going to go and delete it. And I'm going to go to the first one. And it says view. So when you go right there, it's going to tell you, a bit more information of what you're using. If I'm playing that chord, of course, the velocity is too much. If I'm playing that chord, notice that it's telling me right there, it's showing me which keys I'm pressing. And at the top, it's giving me the octave. Now, in the left side, it says trigger MIDI, not used, and then off with the category type and mod. So what the F is that? So that is the wizard mode. So you have 2 ways of creating chords. Let me just close this. You have the rec, which is, the one we just did, just by recording the chord manually. But the wizard is going to give you the chord. You don't need to press any keys. So remember that this synthesizer has a kind of a built-in memory with different chords. That's why it's recognizing this minor. When I do a minor, just recognizing it and then saying, dude, this is a minor. But of course, when we play something that cannot recognize it, it will not say anything. So for now, I'm just going to go and delete this one. We are starting from the scratch, and I'm going to build a chord with the wizard. I'm going to go there, and it says, it's going to give you a lot of options. And then it says press a root note. So you need to, of course, press a root note. What do you want to do? You want to do a C chord, an E chord? What do you want to do? I'm going to do a C. So I'm going to go right there, and it's going to come kind of a first recognizing that you have a C and then E and the G, because by default it's major. And right there, you can toggle through the different things and change some of the settings. For now, it's going to be major, but I can do it minor. I can do it dominant. I can do diminished and so on. It's just going to go and do it and, just do that. Now, then when you change this at the bottom, depends on the category, the type, of course, is going to change. If you go to major, you have the different types right here. You can get some really cool chords. Same with minor or dominant. For example, you have the 7th, the 9. And you can select whatever chord that you want. Now, of course, if you want to audition, you can just play the key where you assigned it, or maybe you can play other keys. And notice that it's going to be changing the root note, right? If I play a C, let me just go to something easy to hear for everyone. If I do a minor chord, we're doing a minor, and it's a C3. Now, if I press a D, now it's going to be a D minor. And this is important because you're going to be selecting right here. You select which chord you want to store, and then you're going to store it to one key. So now let's say I want to do a C, right? I'm going to go right there and do a C. And I want to store it. I'm going to create it. I'm going to go right here, and it's going to ask you, dude, where you want to put it. So I'm going to put it on the C. So there you go. You just created C minor, but with a wizard. Now with the wizard, we have all the things. I'm going to go to the next key. Let's say that one, we have nothing right there. And I'm going to go to the wizard. And the root note is going to be the D, right? That one. But I don't want to do a D. I want to do a C. So I'm going to go back to C. So, of course, right there at the top, I can do, minor again. But now we have different modes. And you have a couple ones. You have the bass, you have the spread, and then the spread 2. And they are very similar, but they work in a different way. And notice that on the keyboard right here, you get a representation of what this is doing. Now, I just bumped the camera. Sorry for that. Okay, I believe that is fine. Okay, that's fine. So whenever you enable this, and of course you can go to off, the bass, which is the first one, is going to give you a bass note. And of course, if you're doing a C, which is the kind of the root note, is going to play a C. So notice that right here is the chord we did, and right there is just going to do a C note 1 octave lower. That's the whole point. It's giving you a bass note. That's pretty much. Now, if you go right there, you can do 1 up instead of 1 down. So it's going to move that C 2 octaves higher, 1 above, the chord you're doing. And then you have at the top or the bottom, let me go to minus, and then I'm going to go right there and you have the notes. So if I do 1, you're going to get 1, which is the root note. And if I do 2, it's going to give you, more notes. And all of these notes are just based on your chords. And if you go back to 0, right? So again, depends on what you want. The other options are pretty similar. And notice that when we change them, the options right here are going to change just a little bit. So this spread mode, it's similar, but it's just going to work in a different way. So if I do right here a note, notice I'm getting the same thing we were getting right here with the bass and 1 note. I do this, I'm going to go right there, and we get the same thing. Now the thing is that with the spread, what you can do is you can still go -1 or +1. You can go right here at the bottom, and when you select something, it's going to tell you, okay, so what is the note? It's going to be a C, or maybe it's going to go C sharp, or maybe D, or D sharp, and so on and so on. Now the difference is that it's not picking one of the keys from the chord that you're playing. It's doing it chromatically, right? Super cool. Right. So the other one, this spread 2, it's pretty similar. I'm going to go and change it. And this is more kind of a closer to the bass than the spread number 1. So this one at the beginning, it's just going to do the same thing that the bass. Now, what we can do, we can go right here at the bottom and you can change the note, the bass note, but it's going to select, of course, one of the notes that you are using. And you can do up to 2 and 3 because we are doing a triad. So now it's doing a G, then of course it's doing a D sharp. If I go down, get the root. Right? So pretty easy to understand. Hopefully you understood this. You can create again this with that, and now we have right there the main chord. So always need to remember where you're kind of assigning the keys, because everything you do, you're going to replace what you had from before. And again, if you want to create it again, you go to the wizard, and it's pretty simple. You just select the root, and you can do this in just 10 seconds. I'm going to go and do minor. I'm going to go right there. I'm going to be adding a bass note, and then I'm going to be ready. Okay, so I'm going to go and create. And once you do that, I'm going to go and do it to a C. So now I'm going to go back to the wizard. You do it again. And on this one, I want to do still C, but I want to do a different C. And this one, I'm going to go and do, I don't know, major 9, whatever. And then I'm going to go right there and just add the other spread, which is going to be this one. And I'm going to be changing the root note to an E. All right. So something simple. Now, once you create, remember that here is where you have the other one. So you cannot put it right there unless you want to replace it. So I'm going to go and put it on a D. So now we have very different chords. So just like the other ones, you can press delete and you can delete whatever you're selecting, right? In this case, I'm going to go and delete that one. So I'm going to go to this one as well, and I'm going to delete it. Now that you know how the chord and the polychord works, with the polychord, there's a trick. What you can do, and now that you know how the wizard mode works, you can play the root note when you're in the polychord mode. I'm going to do, I don't know, a C. And then I'm going to move the encoder, and it's just going to take you to the wizard without you, just pressing wizard and going through all the things. It's just, kind of a shortcut. Okay, so now let's talk about the sequence or the sequencer. It's not like a real sequencer where you can just change the gate time or the velocity like we did with the pattern. It's just a little bit different, but it takes the synth to a whole different level, just a very created level. So, okay, so on this one, what we need to do, and it will use the clock of the internal, the synthesizer. We need to go to edit, and then we need to go to the sequencer right here. Remember? So by default on any default patch is going to be off. So you're going to need to enable it on if you want to use it. So I'm going to go right there and just enable it on. Just like the ARP, this uses the clock. So you can use the clock divider, and you do have some other options. So for example, you can select the length, but first we need to learn how the sequence works. So once you go there and you do, yeah, it's going to show you, you know, how the sequencer works. And it's going to start at some point and then it's going to end at some point. Now notice that you get the length. So the length right here is going to decide how many steps you can do, and you can do up to 32 steps, or you can do up to 2, you know, 2 is the lowest. So in this case, I'm going to go up and I'm going to use 8 steps just to do something simple. Now, the way that this kind of works is that you can go to each step and you can provide a value. You can go up to 100. Oh, I made a mistake right there. I'm going to go right here and select the value. And I'm going to go all the way up 127 or minus 127. And the whole idea of this is that you can provide a different instruction for each different step. If I go right here, you're going to go down. And maybe if we go to the next one, you know, we're going to do something, you know, something simple. Made a mistake on that one. Something simple like that. And if you like this step, just like the patterns, you can just hold. It's going to duplicate it. And then when you move it, it's going to duplicate the steps. All right. So super, you know, super simple to understand. I'm going to go there, maybe do a little bit more. And the next one is just going to be down. And then you just, you know, create your sequence. And at the end of the day, you're going to need to do some experimentation with this one. Maybe this one is going to be up and this one is going to be a little bit down. Now, if I press something, nothing is going to happen. Now, notice that one thing is going on, that when I press a key, if you're on step number 6, it's going to start always from the first step. It doesn't matter where we are. We always start from the same step, the first step, the step number 1. Now, we have a different mode. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Now, how does this work? Because we are just getting nothing. So this, what it will do, we will use this as an instruction for the modulation matrix. So I'm going to go out of this one and I'm going to go to the mod matrix. So right here, what we need to do, we need to select what we want to use, and we need to select, you know, this one. It's going to be the sequencer, the control sequence. There we go. So then, of course, you need to go and select whatever it is that you want to modulate. And on this synthesizer, you can just modulate whatever you want pretty much. So if I hit the mod right here and I do something like the frequency is going to recognize it. So I can, you know, modulate the frequency. Maybe I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to do a little bit of that and do the whole envelope. And I'm using a default patch right now. So now if I press something, nothing happens. Now you're going to need to go right here and you need to provide a value. And again, this one works on negative and positive. And you can use the data entry. So I'm going to go to plus 127, which is going to be pretty much full. And notice that the frequency is being modulated. Now it's a little bit dull, of course. So now what you can do, you can get out of there and go to back to the sequencer. And remember that this controls the speed. You have the divider right here. And it kind of sucks because it goes really slow. Now I can go to 1/16 and get something a little bit more kind of usable. Right? And right here, the whole trick is that you can go crazy. You need to do a little bit of experimentation. Let's say I want to modulate something else, right? So maybe I can go right here at the bottom. I'm going to kind of reuse the same thing. I'm going to go to control sequence. Maybe I just passed it. No, there we go. Control sequence. And then maybe I can go to use the oscillator number 2 and maybe use the tone mod just like that. I'm going to be syncing it to the oscillator number 1. And then I'm going to maybe go up on the pitch mod. So if I play something, you know, we get something maybe a little bit more usable, let's say. But now maybe I want to make it better because we know with the sync, when we modulate the pitch, we're going to get a really cool sound. So I'm going to be using the mod. And I'm going to select the tone mod for here. And I'm going to go at the bottom and select the control sequence again. Need to go all the way after the LFO. There we go. LFO. Oh, maybe I've just missed it. There we go. Control sequence. Now I'm going to go here and select maybe on different property, which is going to be the pitch of the oscillator number 2. And then we just need to decide how much of the sequence we are going to be applying on the modulation. You can use the data entry right here. So I'm going to do something like that. And on the other one, I'm going to go up. And you're going to get, you know, really cool sounds. Now, of course, everything sounds better when you use a little bit of kind of effects. So let me just go and do a dump of reverb, right? Just a nice reverb is going to make everything sound a little bit better. Right? You can, of course, right here and edit the different steps. Right? So very cool. Now, notice that we are using a default patch, and I'm just kind of modulating 3 different properties. So you can do a lot of things because you have an 8 different slots on the modulation matrix. So you can do a million things. If you do an LFO, you can even modulate the rate of the LFO. It's just really, really useful. So I'm going to go back right here. I'm going to go back to the edit, and we're going to talk about the options that you get right here. So we already did the clock divider. You're just going to make it, faster or slower depending on the time that you have right here. Right? So then you have the length. You can change the length if you wish, but you can also do it from here. You can go and change the length. Another thing that's going to happen, let me just go back. Right here at the top, you get the swing. Of course, you can do swing, just like the sequencer. We can do with the sequencer. With the ARP. And then you can do the slew rate. Remember the slew rate, which is going to be a way of smoothing the transitions between each, between each step. So if I go right there and go up on this one, notice that the transitions between each step is just going to be a little bit, kind of a more smooth. All right, so that's what this slew rate does, and we already have that option on the other ones as well. Then you have the key and loop, and this one is the most interesting. Right now, what we are doing when we go to sequence, when we play a new key, the sequence starts. It doesn't matter where we are. It will always restart the sequence from the beginning. So going back, this has different modes. So first is the loop. Now the loop, it doesn't care if we are pressing a new key. It's just gonna start wherever we are. Right? It's not restarting when I press a new key. And that's the whole thing, Then we go to the other one, and you have the loop, you have the key sync. So the key sync, again, works pretty much the same way, but it's like a one shot mode. I'm going to press a key, it's going to trigger sequence, and it's going to stop right there, right? It will not loop. That's why it just doesn't say loop. It's just starting when you press a key. Right? So very, very simple. Now, the one we were using is the last one, which is going to be the key and loop. And it's a combination of both. It's just going to loop, and whenever you press a key, it's going to restart, right? So the last thing that you get right here that I want to show you is the compare and the save. When we started this, of course, we started from something, something simple. If I do compare, we are going to get nothing because this is the default the default sequence for a default patch. So with the compare, you can just compare what you had from before and what you just did, right? You just compare the differences, just like again with the pattern. You compare what you had from before and what you did right now, because all of this is just happening in memory. You never saved this one. Now, the difference is with the pattern is that with the pattern, you can store your own patterns on 32 slots. Yeah, you can use 32 slots to store one pattern each. The problem is that the sequencer or the sequence, you don't have this feature. So if you're going to be saving the sequence, you're going to need to save the sequence on whatever patch you're using it. So you get one sequence per patch, right? So you can have, a lot of sequences. So that's, kind of the downside. but still, it's a very kind of a useful and usable thing. Okay, so now I would love to talk about the compare, and this is a magical button. As you saw in the ARP and the sequence, we can compare, with what we had from before and what we are doing right now. We have that compare function, but you have a dedicated control, and this one works for pretty much the whole patch, the whole preset you're working with. And I'm going to show you right from the scratch. I'm going to turn it off. For now, I'm just going to turn it off, and I'm going to turn it back on. Because I want to kind of start from the scratch, and this is kind of a changes if you're working with something, and it depends on what you're doing and what you had in memory. Now, I want to just kind of give you the complete kind of a walkthrough. So right now, when I turn it on, I'm on a patch, and I am on the A10, right? So I don't know what the sound is. So this is the sound, right? So really cool sound. Now, if I press compare, right here, the panel shows up. And this is kind of the first mode of compare. And when I click it, I tap it again, it goes back. But we are always getting the same sound, right? We are always getting the same sound. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go to the frequency, and I'm going to change something about this preset. I'm going to go there, and I'm just going to change it. And in this case, sounds pretty much the same. So I'm going to go all the way up on the frequency, right? So now this one, it's pretty different from what we have from before. Right? So it's just pretty different. So let's say that this is the way I like this patch, right? I love it and I want to keep it. But by mistake, you're going to be doing yes, and you go to the next patch and you say, oh my God, I just deleted my patch. I spent 2 hours doing this. What can I do? Now remember, everything that you do right here, when you modify something and you get the asterisk because it's not saved, is going to remember everything that you were doing. So what you can do, you can restore or you can recall what you were doing before you changed the patch. And this has a very short memory, so you need to be careful with this. So if you go to right there, notice that it says clear backup. So if you do compare, you're going to be clearing the backup pretty much, or you're going to be listening to all the thing that you were doing. So for now, I'm just not going to do anything, and I'm going to go and do program to cancel. I'm going to press this patch, which is the tension bass, and I'm going to press compare. Now, when I do compare, notice that it's showing me the other one, and it's kind of taking me to the patch I was using before. And this is because when you do compare, it's going to show you what is in memory, but you're still on the patch, that brace sound, that crazy sequence sound. So if you do compare again, and you compare again, it's just not going to happen. You're going to lose the patch. So for example, if I go, we get the tension brace, right? So if I go back to the previous one, we never saved it and we lost it. So what you will need to do, if you just modified your patch and you make a mistake and you go to the next one, when you go to the right, instead of clearing the backup, you're going to need to kind of a confirm, right? So you can clear the backup right there. I'm going to go out. So I'm going to do compare, right? And now we have the previous one that we want, the one we want to save, the one we forgot to save. So then you go and you press right, and what you can do right here, you can go and change the place where you want to, store it. So remember we were on the 10. So okay, so I'm gonna go and confirm to write it, and now we are back on the 10, and we save the changes. All right, it's a little bit annoying. So. But, we restored what we forgot to store on the previous patch. So this is one of the applications of the compare. You can, recover what you were doing and, just save it maybe for later. Now, remember, if I do a change, something like this, notice that we changed it. I'm going to go to the next patch. And of course, we have the next one. Once you do compare, you're going to be listening the one you had in memory. Once you do compare again, you are going to lose it. And for now, I'm going to go down in frequency. Notice that I do compare and I'm never recovering this. All right. So, of course, this is because once you do compare, you're going to be trying to compare with the current loaded patch. And that is the kind of the second use of the compare. And let me just go right here one more time. I'm going to go to this one. This is the one we want to save. if I go right here to the next one, if you don't care about what you had from before, when you go to write and you press the compare, notice that it says right here that you're clearing the backup. That's what we are doing. So now we don't have a backup. So you always need to be careful with this one. So this is the first kind of a use of the compare. And I'm going to go to the first one because the other one is a little bit annoying. So, okay, so that's the first kind of a usage of the compare. I'm going to go to the same patch we have before. You know, it's this one. You kind of save it there. Maybe I'm going to go and just write it right there. Okay, so now this is the current patch, not edited. So what we can do, if I do an edit or something like that, you have the compare and you can see a panel. Now the panel is going to show you what you have right here loaded, you know, the current position of your knobs. If I go all the way down, notice that the sound is not changing. Right? So the main sound, the main default patch, it's not changing. If I go back to compare, when I change the frequency, I am altering the sound. I'm changing the preset. So this is like the second use of the compare. When you're not on the compare mode, you of course are editing the preset. Now when you go back to compare, it's going to let you hear the preset that you have from before you modify it, you know, the saved preset. Not the current, you know, in memory preset, that the values that you have right here. So that's the difference. So you can hear what you had from before and what you have right now. So that's, again, you know, the second use of the compare. You just compare what you had from before and what you're doing right now. Now, the other thing that you can do with the compare, let's say that, you know, maybe I'm going to go back to this, you know, this patch. I'm going to kind of clear the compare. I don't care about that one. I'm going to go to this one, right? So I'm going to like this one. Maybe it's a little bit too bright. I'm going to make it like this and I'm going to write it, right? So I like this one. We have nothing on the compare, notice? So what we can do, let's say I like this patch, right? And I'm going to go to the compare. So at the very top, it's telling you what each knob or slider or fader in this case is. So the compare lets you, it will tell you what is the position of your knobs on the panel and what is the position of the sliders on the patch. So it's telling me right here, okay, so the ARP rate, and it goes in kind of a sections. It starts right here, then goes right here, then here, then here, and then here. So it starts right there at the top with the portamento. So notice if I change it, it's going to be changing it. And then it's telling me, dude, on the original patch, the portamento was all the way down. So I'm going to go to that control, and I'm going to go all the way down. Then the ARP rate on the original patch was, you know, a little bit up. So you're going to need to modify it until you reach there. And it's kind of a little bit difficult to get it right there in the spot. And notice that you get an arrow pointing down. This is because I need to go down. But when you go over and then you need to go up, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of you know, snap it. There we go. Now it's snapped. And then for each one, you're going to get the same thing. Then it's going to be the ARP gate. Then you're going to go up to match it. Then you have the LFO rate. The LFO rate on the original patch was like that. And then this one is going to be like that. And then this one is going to be like that. So notice it says minus and plus to go to the next one. So when you go to the next one, it's going to be this section, the oscillators. And notice that everything is pretty much the same, but the tone mod is a little bit up. And then the level of the noise is getting a little bit up right there. I'm going to go to the next one. And then we have right here, the first one is the unison. So the unison is a little bit up. Then the frequency, this one, we are kind of right there in spot because we did it. And then the resonance, and then the envelope, and then this one, and then this one. And then it's going to be the VCA level all the way up and the HP frequency. And the next one is going to be the envelope. And this one is a little bit confusing sometimes because you have 4 different envelopes. So right here is going to be the VCA, and it tells you right here where you are. So if you go to the VCA, you're going to go there, you're going to go there. Then if you changed it right here, it will change it right there at the top. So you're going to go there and you go there. Now, the thing is, of course, this is telling you where the knobs are. And since you have 3 different places, VCA, VCF, and mod, the knobs or the faders could be on different positions. So it's just kind of a little bit, you know, redundant. But you can still use this to know what the current patch was using on the VCA, VCF, or mod. That's the whole point of the compare. So right now I'm just kind of messing that up. But if I go there, it's telling me that I need to go down, and if I go to VCA, it's telling me I need to go up. So you cannot really change this, but you can know what the previous patch was using. Now, right now, notice that the panel that we have right here looks very different from what we had from before, right? We had all the way down. So this is the second kind of the third application that you can use, or the third use of the compare. You just can load a patch that maybe you really like, and you can go to the compare and just check where the faders are on that preset, which is something very useful for learning purposes. Maybe you really like that patch and you want to know how, whoever made the patch did it. Well, then you go right here first to the compare, you match the panel, and then of course you can go to the edit sections and check what options you have there. Maybe it's doing a little bit of modulation, or maybe doing a sequence, but you cannot really check it with the compare in this case. You can just check what you have on the faders on the panel. So you can copy paste effects. So let me just go, and for now I'm gonna load a default patch. I'm gonna go back, and let's say that that's the effects of this patch. Let's say I really like what this is doing. So I'm gonna go to effects, and I can see that it has a lot of things, and I want to kind of copy what I have right here, and I want to use it on a different patch, right? So what you can do, you can hold the effects, and it says right here, do global to copy the effects. So once you do that, you're going to be copying whatever configuration you have right here in the effects. So now if I go out of here and I kind of start kind of a default patch, I'm going to go there and I have nothing. Whenever I go to effects, what you can do is pretty much the same thing. You're going to be copying it. I'm going to do effects, and notice this global copy, and then right is going to be paste. So we don't want to copy. We want to paste. If I paste it, now we have the same effects on a default patch, which is something, very useful since you have 1 million presets right here. Okay, so let's talk about favorites, and this is something I didn't cover on the other video, on the first video I recorded, because the video was too long. So I'm going to be covering this right now. So favorites, it's very simple. So you can have favorites. Now, when you go to Prog and you hold it, and then it says FX favorites, you're going to go and press FX, and it gives you two options. It says rotary to access to the favorites, or you can toggle yes or no, to toggle to your favorites. Now, in this case, I'm going to be doing the rotary right here. So this is going to take you to the favorites view, right? Pretty much. So, okay, so right now it's just completely empty. How can we add favorites? I'm going to go back, press program, and go back. And right now I have a default patch, but, let's try to load something. Let's say that I like this one really, really much, right? I like this a lot. So I'm going to be going to effects right there, and the toggle, the plus in this case, is going to be adding it to the favorites. I'm going to go right there, move it, and there it is. We have the dot pulse RD. So if I go back to program, this one, of course, is going to be on the favorites. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to do no. I'm going to be going to the favorites, and notice that we delete it. So it means, and it's a little bit confusing, it means that right here, when you go to the effects, this one will add it and this one will remove it if you are on that, on that favorite patch, which is the C109. Now, of course, what we want to do maybe is we want to add a couple of one. I'm going to go there and add that one. That's going to be my favorite. I'm going to do that one, and that's going to be my favorite. And that's going to be my favorite. Okay, so now we have 3. If I go to the favorites browser, of course you can, and I thought I added 3. So let me just do one more. Why not? I'm going to go to the next one, and that's just going to be my favorite. Cool. I'm going to go and toggle it, and it's not doing it. Okay, so what the F is going on? I'm going to go there. Maybe I'm just always loading the same patch. I'm going to go and just going to add it to the favorites. I'm going to go and toggle, and now we go. Okay, so maybe I was doing something wrong. I don't know. So now we have 3 different favorites, right? So of course, you can toggle all your favorites with the bank up and down. right? Now let's say that you want to clear the favorites. So when you go back, the other option is going to be doing right, but this will erase all favorites. So you need to be careful. And it's asking you, it's kind of giving you a new window saying, are you sure you want to do this? So in this case, I'm going to go and erase all. And if we go back, there's nothing there. Okay, so I want to show you a couple more things before we finish the guide. Just want to add a couple things. I'm gonna go there to global, and if I go one more, you have the panel settings, and you have some very useful things right here that can make your life easier. For example, right here you have the fader mode. You have the jump, which is the default mode that you get from factory, and you get the pass through. So what is the difference? Okay, so I'm going to go to the jump, which is the one we get from default, and I'm going to go to maybe, I don't know, that patch. It doesn't matter. I'm going to kind of clear whatever we have on the compare. So if I do something, that's the sound we get. And right here is telling us where the fader, where the frequency cutoff is, which is going to be around the middle. Now, we are not there. So as soon as I just move a tiny bit, it's going to kind of go right there and change the frequency cutoff where we are moving it. So it's jumping to whatever position we are currently if we move the fader. That's the jump mode. So when I go to global again, let me just go to global, and I'm going to use the pass through. I'm going to go back to program. And if I go back and I go right here, this is where the current patch is, and our knob is right here. So if I press something, notice that the values start to change, but the sound it's not really changing. Maybe I'm going to need to go to something more obvious. Let me just go and see this one. Maybe not that one. Maybe not that one. Let me just try to find something cool. Okay, so this is a good patch, at least to learn this. Now, the fader right here is kind of right here, right at the bottom, maybe around, below 5. And the hour frequency is all the way up. So if I press something, that is the sound we get. It's just the bass, right? So the pass through would means that we will need to move the knob, and until we pass through the current value, the original value, the knob or the frequency knob, the slider will not do anything. So if I do something and play it, notice that I'm gonna go down and we get no change in sound, and none of this is moving, but the fader is moving. And then at one point, we are going to reach the original point, and we are almost there. It's just telling you how much we need to go, and kaboom, we are there. And then we can only then just modify the value. So the pass through, it means that you need to pass through the original value in order to get the fader to do something. And then you have all the options like the info dialogues. Now, the dialogues is what you get, the information dialogues that you get. If you turn it off, it's not turning them off. I don't know if it's an error, or maybe it's my unit. Either way, I just really don't care. It's just useful to have the dialogues. And then you have all the things like the cycle to prog. This one, it's kind of super useful. Now, let me tell you why. Right now, it's on, and by default, this is the way that this behaves. And I'm just going to, maybe go to a default program. So whenever you go to effects, for example, you're going to go there, or let's just maybe load a different program. And we are not going to do some playing. I'm going to go to effects. We go to the first one. Then, of course, we have 4 different effects. We keep pressing effects. We go to the effects number 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and then we go back to program. That is the cycle to program. I know it sounds dumb, but that's what it is. If I go back to the panel settings, I'm going to disable the cycle to program. Now I'm going to go back, and when I go to effects, I'm going to the main of effects. Now I'm going to go to the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and instead of cycling back to program, it's going to go back to the main of effects. So that's the difference. You can avoid always going back to program because sometimes it's just a little bit annoying. If I'm on effects, I just want to work with effects. I don't want to cycle to program. You can cycle to program doing, program or something like that. But again, it's just something that you can change right here. So by default, this is on. Then of course you can change the brightness and the contrast. Right now it's very low because it's kind of a little bit friendly to the camera right there. And then you have this one, and this one is very useful, is remember pages. So right now it's on. Okay, so let me just kind of show you or give you a good example of how this works. Let me just think. If I go right here to the oscillator, I'm going to go to the oscillator edit, and we are on the oscillator number 1 parameter. I'm going to go back, and now we are on the 2. Let's say for whatever reason, I'm going to go back to program, right? And I'm getting out of that view. Now, if I do edit again, it remembers that we were on the oscillator number 2, you know, on the second page. So it remembers the page of where you were, even though if you exit. If I exit again, it's going to the 2. If I do it once again, it's going to go to the 1. If I do program and go back to the 1, it's back to the 1. So it's just remembering. So this is on. If I turn it off, I'm going to go back to maybe program. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to go to the number 2. And if I exit and go back again, it's not remembering. It's always starting from the first page. And this, of course, depends on your workflow or maybe what you want to do. Maybe this is more useful to you, right? So there's some options that you get. And we are done. You know, hopefully you learned something new on this video. And okay, remember to like, subscribe, and if you have the money, you can afford it, of course. Always, if you can afford it, check Patreon so you can support what I do. And of course, you get some sample packs, and you know, so you always get some goodies in return. Oh, and one more thing, I could have ended the guides. This is the last guide I did too, because it covered pretty much the whole synth. Now, the only thing I didn't cover in depth is the effects, because you have a million effects, and it's going to be a very long and tedious video talking about what each effects can do. So I decided not to record something like this, but maybe you want something like this. Maybe you can leave in the comments and kind of a vote if you want me to record a video talking about each different effects and all the different properties that you get. Because in the manual, you do get some descriptions, but sometimes it's just a little bit hard to kind of understand what they say. And all the effects are just, you know, they have a million options. So maybe you will love a video like that, and I will be glad to do it if you request it. All right, so thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.